Hello everyone, and welcome to the 249th episode of Analyzing Evil, featuring the characters and themes of Trick or Treat. A sinister and murderously festive and heartwarming a film as there ever was, Trick or Treat is one of those rare pieces of media that not only creates a story themed around one of our most beloved holidays, but that does so fantastically that it becomes synonymous with the holiday itself. While there is reportedly a sequel in the works, so far there hasn't been a date set for its release. But there is a bit more to this mythos in the form of a graphic novel that was released quite a while ago. So in this video we're going to explore both the graphic novel and the film so we might learn all we can about Sam and the stories that he appears in. But you know what's one of the best things about Sam's character? His mask. And well, masks don't have to just be reserved for holidays and special occasions. In fact, you can wear a mask every night to help you increase your quality of life. A mask that you can obtain from our sponsor for this video, Manta Sleep. Aside from a healthy diet and exercise, sleep is the most necessary thing to your overall physical and mental health. And it's hard to get the rest your body needs if you're constantly disrupted by unwanted light invading your sleeping area. But that becomes impossible once you pick up a mask from Manta. Manta offers 8 different styles of sleep masks that offer all types of sleepers the eye protection needed to make your dreaming hours as peaceful as possible. And all of Manta's masks feature unparalleled adjustability, a premium feel, and pro-nap movement that can soothe your eyes as they protect them if you choose their steam or cool masks, or even your ears with the sound mask and its built-in Bluetooth headphones, which is the one I have right here that I can't sleep without now that I've experienced the better quality of sleep that my Manta mask allows me to have. Manta's selection and quality are hard to beat, and with the holidays nearly upon us, I encourage you to browse their website and pick through all the different features of the mask they offer to find the one that best suits your needs, or the needs of someone dear to you that could use a little more rest as well, as no matter what your sleeping schedule is, I guarantee a mask from Manta Sleep will only make you feel infinitely better while you're sleeping and awake. So if you're like me and the slightest sound and tiniest pinpricks of light disturb your slumber, head over to mantasleep.com and use the code VIOLET at checkout to get 10% off your order and enhance your sleeping experience today. Thank you Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video. Now without further ado, let's begin. As time has marched on, the history of Halloween has become lost to most people. Here in America, most of us are taught when we're young that Halloween is a holiday purely dedicated to spooky fun. A day where kids get to dress up as their favorite monsters and characters and run around their neighborhoods collecting your local dentist yearly bonus. For adults, it can be a day dedicated to your kids and their enjoyment, or a day where you too get to dress up and let loose with friends or other like-minded individuals. Some people are barred from celebrating the holiday at all though, with tales of demons and devilry told to you by your parents making it a most unholy day that is an affront to everything pure and good in this world. As far as the faithful are concerned, there might be a modicum of truth to that notion, but like many things throughout history, the truth often becomes distorted and altered as time goes on, and such is the case with Halloween, as the very name of Halloween actually has its origins not in anything demonic or satanic, but in something much more holy. The veneration of saints is common throughout many different Christian denominations, something that was much more prevalent during the first few centuries following the establishment of the religion. Most of you will be familiar with the term, "Hallowed be thy name," but hallowed is just an adjective derived from the word hallow, which is an alternate, albeit archaic word that one can use to refer to a saint. Most of you will also be familiar with an alternate name for Halloween itself, All Hallows Eve, and as you might have already guessed, that makes November 1st, All Hallows Day. And in fact, these two holidays are actually part of a Triduum, which is a religious observance that lasts 3 days, with November 2nd being known as All Souls Day. So as you might have already guessed as well, Halloween and the ensuing 2 days were originally days where Christians would venerate and pray for saints, as well as all souls that hadn't reached heaven yet, a set of holidays that were established all the way back in the 8th century. But if Halloween is actually meant to be a holy day, then how did it become a day where most see it as the exact opposite? Well, part of that has to do with traditional Christian belief that souls wandered the earth until All Saints' Day, and in order to protect oneself from any vengeful spirits seeking to get a few licks in before they departed this plane, people would wear costumes to disguise themselves from them. And in parts of Europe, baking soul cakes and offering them to poor and disenfranchised people who came to one's door in exchange for prayers for the dead, especially children, is seen as being the origin of trick-or-treating, which at the time was called souling. Additionally, the jack-o'-lanterns we know and love today were originally carved from turnips, with those who went out souling carrying them with them in order to add further protection against evil spirits. Now, the idea that vengeful spirits might accost you on this day were you not careful is part of the story regarding Halloween's association with ghosts, monsters, and demons. But like so many great things in this world, the horror-laced nature of the Halloween of our time can be attributed to the Celts. When you hear any righteously inclined individuals decrying Halloween as a demonic pagan holiday, what they may knowingly or unknowingly be referring to is in fact a pagan holiday that was also celebrated on October 31st in Celtic-speaking countries, the Gaelic festival of Samhain. Paganism has gotten a pretty bad rap for a long time now, but most of it really boils down to nature worship, and it's rather harmless. The same thing can be said for Samhain, which is a festival marking the end of the harvest season that's also said to be a day when the boundary between this world and the next blurs. And just like Christians with All Hallows Eve, the people who celebrate it or celebrate Samhain would also dress up in costumes to hide themselves from spirits, appeasing them with offerings of food and drink so their livestock might survive the winter. And people would also go door to door singing songs in exchange for food, another source of inspiration for our modern day practice of trick-or-treating. So you'd think with all the similarities between the two, there wouldn't be too much of a stink made over a pagan holiday by Christians. However, what really solidified Halloween as being something sinister was not just the pagan origins of Samhain, but the Protestant movement and their vilification of most things associated with the Catholic Church and popery, and so being seen as a heretical Catholic practice, as well as something that could be associated with the pagan and thus the erroneously demonic. For many in the Western world, Halloween became something to be feared, not celebrated. Thankfully though, these traditions were kept alive and well in Ireland and Scotland, and once America started receiving a mass influx of Irish immigrants in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, those traditions slowly started to become integrated into American culture, and they eventually transformed into the wonderful holiday that is the Halloween we know and love today. And to make sure that everything we hold dear about the holiday is kept intact, there's an entity out there waiting to punish you if you dare to tread on any of its time-honored traditions. And that entity's name is Sam. But what is Sam? Is he a demon, a fae, or something else? I'd place my bets on something else, as just like Halloween itself, I'd wager that Sam's name has been distorted or perhaps lost over time, with his real name being not Sam, but Samhain. Because for those of you who didn't know, Samhain isn't spelled in English like it sounds. It's spelled like this, which most of us probably pronounced, myself included, Samhain. So for all intents and purposes, Sam's name is Sam, and his last name is Hain, but it's pronounced Samhain. And by all accounts, Sam is the very spirit of Halloween itself. Now while that may be true, does that mean Sam is evil? After all, we just went over the origins of Halloween, and just like Principal Wilkins mentions in the film, all the traditions we associate with Halloween were originally designed to protect us from evil. Not so it. So if Sam is the embodiment and protector of those traditions, doesn't that mean he's more so a benevolent entity than anything? I think the answer to that is, sort of. In this film, we're shown 5 different stories, most of which involve varying degrees of evil. In the first story, we see a couple returning from their night of festivities, with the husband heading inside to put on a nature documentary, and the wife staying out to take down decorations. In the second story involving Principal Wilkins, we find a cruel and sadistic man who centered his holiday activities around handing out poison candy and preying on young women attending parties and other festivities. In the next story featuring Macy, Chip, Schrader, and Seda, we see these 4 targeting a girl they lovingly refer to as Retard Rhonda, taking her to an abandoned rock quarry and telling her a horrific story about a bus full of special needs kids being drowned there by their bus driver, a man who did so after making a plan with their parents to get rid of them for them, a man who unfortunately survived this accident. These kids proceed to severely scare Rhonda, who had gone outside her comfort zone and placed her trust in them. But when those drowned kids make a return from the dead, Rhonda has the last laugh and ends up escaping while her tormentors are eviscerated by these risen children. The next story involves a pack of werewolves that go around the country every Halloween feeding off various men, with one of this year's victims being Principal Wilkins. And the final story features the bus driver who drowned the kids in the second story, Mr. Krieg, and his fight with Sam. Now in most of these stories, there's clear lines drawn between good and evil. Principal Wilkins was a repugnant excuse for a human being who'd managed to corrupt his son into being a mere image of his lecherous and sadistic self. But there's always a bigger fish, and he appropriately meets his end via consumption by the werewolves from the third story, a group of monsters that are also evil, considering they kill innocent people, and not just creeps like Wilkins. And while you could argue they're more animal than human, these women clearly enjoy hunting humans, and I'm sure they could feed themselves through other means, so it's a bit hard to claim they're just feeding on people because they have to. Mr. Krieg was clearly a disgusting individual, just like Wilkins, albeit in a less visceral way. But being the bus driver who made a pact with several of his students' parents to murder them is, pretty telling of what kind of person he was. And he also meets an appropriate end at the hands of the children that he victimized. Now the thing is though, I did say that most of these stories have clear lines drawn between good and evil, but not all of them. In the opening story, the only crime committed by Emma, the woman who just needed to take her decorations down the night of Halloween, is murdered for being someone who takes their decorations down the night of a holiday. In the third story with the kids who play a prank on Rhonda, the evil acts committed by those kids are centered around bullying, which, while being a horrendous thing that children do to each other that can result in some incredibly adverse effects on the victim's mental and physical health, if not even causing them to die in some cases. In this case, the trick they played on Rhonda, while being distasteful and wrong, isn't something I think anyone would consider the crime to end all crimes, and so it's not something that deserves a sentence of death by evisceration. With that in mind, Rhonda's actions here in regard to passing that sentence on these kids is in some ways a gray area, considering that she was victimized by these kids and was clearly experiencing extreme emotional duress. And because of that, I'm not sure her leaving these kids to die can be classified as evil, or more so as a sort of crime of passion born from a moment of emotional complexity. But regardless, leaving them to die was still wrong, and it was far from appropriate when you consider what they did in this scenario. Okay. So clearly there's a lot of evil unleashed in this film by various villainous and less than villainous characters. So does that make Sam, who ends up punishing them or at least overseeing their punishments, a benevolent and protective spirit? Again, sort of. If we go purely based off Sam's first act in this story, his murdering of Emma, then no, he's not. As the only thing Emma did wrong here is she took her Halloween decorations down early, and more specifically, blew out her jack-o'-lantern, which tradition stipulates you must keep lit until morning. But if we look at every other story he appears in, there's a little more nuance to be found. The first time we see Sam chronologically is when he takes candy from Mr. Wilkins, and while Wilkins is far from being an ideal person, Sam, who likely knows what Wilkins does with his holiday, doesn't bother to stop what he's doing. He simply takes a piece of tainted candy and leaves. During the third story, we learn that Sam was watching the bus driving to its final destination during the flashback we receive, doing nothing to stop it. And when Rhonda leaves the other kids at the quarry, we see Sam watching her as she leaves, doing nothing but offering a small acknowledgement to her jack-o'-lantern and letting her go on her way. When the werewolves have gathered all their victims and begin their feast, Sam is present, watching from a log as a jack-o'-lantern burns brightly in the background. So in some of these stories, Sam doesn't exactly protect anyone, but he does facilitate or condone their revenge, like with Rhonda, and the fact that he likely knew the zombie kids were coming to get their revenge on Mr. Krieg, and by overseeing the murder of Principal Wilkins. Which does mean that Sam is someone who will allow injustices to be committed, but who also sees to it that those injustices are punished in some way eventually. But aside from that notion, he either harms people or commits murders, or he stands idly by as other people do the same. So at least as far as humans are concerned, it would appear that Sam is more malevolent than benevolent. However, as far as Halloween is concerned, Sam is a benevolent and protective spirit. As I mentioned earlier, Sam is quite literally the spirit of Halloween, Samhain made physical, that punishes those who do not abide by his traditions. Sam isn't bothered at all by the fact that he murders an innocent woman, because in his eyes, she isn't innocent. She's a heretic who's deigned to break one of his traditions, and so she must be punished for it. He doesn't care that Principal Wilkins is offering kids tainted candy, or that he's dressing up to prey on women, because he's still abiding by Halloween traditions by doing so, no matter how grisly the traditions he abides by might be. Sam didn't do anything when he saw Mr. Krieg's bus drive by him all those years ago because, in a sense, what Mr. Krieg and the parents of those kids were doing were pulling one hell of an insidious trick, so why should he care if they die? Likewise, Rhonda leaving the kids who tricked her to die is sort of like a reverse trick, and considering she's well versed in Halloween lore and holds to the traditions of it better than anyone else we see in this story, she's safe from his wrath. The werewolves also abide by tradition by dressing up in costumes and lighting their own jack-o'-lanterns, pulling a trick on unsuspecting victims much like Mr. Krieg did. Mr. Krieg wasn't tricking kids, he was scaring them away from his porch and offering them no chance to trick-or-treat, with his house being undecorated and bereft of any and all Halloween cheer, thus warranting his execution in Sam's eyes. But once he unknowingly offered Sam a treat, Sam chose to leave him alone, considering what just transpired a lesson well learned. So in essence, it doesn't matter who lives and who dies as far as Sam is concerned. All that matters is that people uphold Halloween traditions. And if they don't, they die. It's as simple as that. And so in fulfilling his duties, Sam commits acts of evil, which would make him evil, at least in some ways. Right? You'll never guess what I'm going to say next. Sort of. Sam, being a spiritual entity and the living embodiment of Halloween, isn't really bound by morality as we see it. He operates according to his own set of morals, and for him, what he does is just a part of his mandate to protect and honor Halloween. When you look at what he does through a human lens though, his actions do seem quite evil in many ways. I for one don't think an entity who murders people for blowing out candles and taking down decorations could be considered good. And when you add in his willingness to stand by while a busload of children is murdered, and while a man hands out poison candy to children, it's pretty hard to claim that he isn't evil in some way, even if he ends up repaying them for it further down the line. Sam is a protector of tradition, a monster if you want to call him that, but a monster who's here for a purpose, and who fulfills that purpose no matter who it may harm in the process. Even so, Sam's role in this story is still rather gray as far as morality is concerned, as while he might appear to be evil in many ways, when you consider what he does in this story and the retribution many of the people in it receive, things become much more murky. And while the film does a great job of emphasizing this for us, there is another piece of trick-or-treat media that further shows us what Sam is, and why he might not be as bad as he might seem to be. In 2015, Michael Dougherty released a graphic novel that features 4 stories much like the film does, all of them being told from the perspective of a grandfather telling his frightened granddaughter these stories, each of which take place in different time periods, with the first taking place in Ireland in 1640, and the second, third, and fourth taking place in America in 1853, 1955, and what we can assume to be the mid-60s respectively. And in each of these stories, we find Sam making an appearance. In the first, we witness a good old-fashioned witch-burning taking place in Ireland, and as the story progresses, we find the priest in charge of delivering last rites to the accused becoming skeptical of his faith when he has a conversation with the woman who he's supposed to interrogate. When he chooses to release her, and his fellow holy men discover his treachery, they capture them both and end up burning both of them at the stake. Prior to this, however, this so-called witch invokes some ancient Celtic magic and ends up summoning Sam, and while the two of them do end up perishing, a seed containing that magic is preserved, with the girl gathering up those seeds and taking them with her to the new world with her. When the young girl who's being told this story remarks that she doesn't like this story because it doesn't seem to be about Halloween magic, we receive these lines from her grandfather. "But it is, sweetheart. You see, Halloween magic has a funny way of working. It can be tricky and mischievous, but it always sets things right, and in the end, it survives." A beautiful ending to a story if there ever was one, and the next 3 stories all have similarly beautiful endings. The second story involves a group of American settlers looking to expand their railroad company, and their desire to have a tribe of natives move their village to accomplish that. The daughter of the company's owner, Sarah, ends up making friends with them and sharing her traditions with them as they share theirs with her. But her father ends up tricking his daughter into giving them poison candy, which causes all of them to perish. However, Sarah ends up becoming the next Corn Maiden, a protective spirit who watches over the tribe, and with the power invested in her by Sam himself, she takes her revenge on her family for murdering her friends and slaughters them all. In the third story, a detective is hired to solve a case where a mysterious killer known as the Echo Park Devil is going around and murdering women with a devil mask on, something that's blamed on witchcraft by the mayor of the city. Unbeknownst to our detectives, he's actually hired by a woman who was murdered by this man, who's returned to seek justice from beyond the grave. And when he finally discovers who it is, and puts an end to his reign of terror with the help of Sam, we learn that it's the very same mayor who was drumming up hysteria amongst his people. And Sam, who is not one to stand by while someone blames his holiday for causing murders designed to give a mayor a PR boost, appropriately aids this spirit in bringing an end to his atrocities. The last story is another of those gray areas as far as Sam's actions go, as it deals with a town that chooses to do a church lockup on Halloween, rather than having its children dress up in sinful costumes and entertain devilry. The son of the preacher, Rory, and his friend James end up breaking out from the lockup and dressing up anyway, vandalizing homes as they go along. And when the preacher arrives with the police in tow to punish them, all hell breaks loose as monsters, demons, and spirits come to stop these people from ruining Halloween, while also transforming the boys into half-monsters as well. We later see that Sam is the one responsible for creating these creatures by throwing candy into a cauldron, and after these monsters cause all kinds of mayhem, and Rory murders his father, we find that Rory chooses to embrace monsterhood and flies off to join his newfound brethren. And it's at the end of this story that we learn that the man telling these tales was Rory's friend James all along. Now all of these stories are great, and they all emphasize for us Sam's more protective role in regard to people who follow his traditions in more open ways than the film did. And all of these endings, especially the first, and its mention of how Halloween magic always makes things right in the end, ties back into what I mentioned earlier about Sam providing justice in some ways to people who are victimized on Halloween. Because as much as Sam is willing to allow violence, mayhem, and murder to occur, he does end up eventually seeing to it that things are set right. So is Sam evil then? Well, if you take into account that we witness him murdering people over decorations, then yes, we can at least say he's evil because of that. If you consider that he allows innocents to get hurt, even if he avenges them later, then you could say he's evil because of that as well. However, there's something very important we need to take into account here when using this aspect of Sam to judge him. That being whether or not Sam is even capable of preventing any crimes that take place on Halloween from occurring in the first place. In each of these stories, Sam does not prevent anything from happening. He only provides an avenue for retribution once they've occurred. And maybe he does this not because he doesn't want to prevent these things from happening, but because he's incapable of doing so. It's a pretty common thing in fiction and myth for spirits to be bound by certain parameters when moving through the world and fulfilling their duties. So maybe Sam is bound by a set of rules of his own. As the spirit of Halloween, maybe he isn't capable of stopping people from doing horrible things or dishonoring traditions, for that's not what he's been mandated to do. His mandate is to protect Halloween by any means necessary once it's under threat, or people who hold to its traditions when they come under threat. Nothing more and nothing less. So I don't actually think we can claim Sam is evil for letting crimes happen on Halloween, because I'm not sure that he can even stop them. Again though, murdering people for not holding to tradition isn't the greatest thing in the world. So for that, I'd say that we can claim he's at least partially evil. But what do you think? Is Sam a demon who deserves no sympathy, or is he a bit more nuanced than he might appear at times? Please let us all know down below. But regardless of what your view of Sam is, the fact remains that Sam, and the trick-or-treat universe he comes from, have proven to be fantastic additions to Halloween media. And I'd say there's no better character out there to serve as the physical embodiment of Halloween than Sam is. And to close us out, I think we should all take to heart some wise words conveyed to us by James at the end of Days of the Dead. Ghosts, monsters, witches, even death itself, they're nothing to be scared of. Heck, that's why we dress up like them, to catch some of that magic. Halloween's the one night when some folks wear costumes, so they can finally be themselves. Happy Halloween, everyone, and stay safe out there. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Analyzing Evil, and I hope you've enjoyed. What are your thoughts on Trick or Treat? Did I miss anything? Let me know down below and leave a suggestion for a villain you'd like to see featured while you're at it. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. A big thank you to all of my subscribers, my patrons, my members, anyone who's decided to honor me with a super thank, and especially Elijah Kai VA and Effigy, our Dark Lord channel members, and a most vile thank you to those whose names you're seeing on screen now. Join the channel's Discord server and subreddit to interact with myself and the community, and follow me on the social media platforms listed below to keep up with the channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you soon.